Meantime, joining us right now to discuss all of this is Joel Rubin. He's the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State who served in both the Obama and Bush administrations. I'll ask the question to you. Do you think this is an invasion? How would you describe what's happening here?
Well, Andrew, I think the headline should be, this is the dismemberment of Ukraine. What we're watching is a slow-moving takeover of the East by Vladimir Putin. We're seeing him amass nearly 200,000 troops around Ukraine's borders, continuing to threaten. There's no reason for all of these troops unless he is going to do something with them. And with the dictator, one has to believe them when they say they have. He says he has intentions by putting troops right there. So this is a very high-stakes moment. President Zelensky's comments notwithstanding, it's clear that he, too, is deeply concerned. He made a speech at Munich just a couple of days ago calling out Russia and calling out, frankly, the United States, the West, everybody for the predicament that dismemberment, I think, is the right way to describe it.
Joel, in terms of our NATO allies potentially splintering, we've already talked about Italy, which relies in part, but only a very small part, of access to Russian gas. What do you think we're going to be seeing here? How do you think Germany ultimately is going to react? And what do you think the United States should or should not be doing?
Well, it's a really sensitive moment right now on this question of sanctions and economic penalties to Russia, which will be severe if Vladimir Putin does proceed further. That seems to be where the White House is falling right now on this. And President Biden, Vice President Harris, they've been meeting with the leaders of these countries, the leader of Germany, to say, we need you to stick with us and turn off Nord Stream 2, for example. And we need our European allies to cut off financial engagements with Russia if Russia breaches the line. So keeping that unity together, that's been a big achievement of the Biden team, a strong, powerful coalition. But yes, Italy, Germany, they're nervous. France, they're nervous. And so I think that's why we see the continuing engagement and diplomacy to keep a unified Western front and make sure that Vladimir Putin knows that it will be a severe hardship for him and his economy and his people if he goes further. And so the limits right now that we saw last night from the White House on the penalties, those are calibrated to save the hardest sanctions for a further invasion.
Joel, so we think of Putin, we've known him for so long, he must be ancient, but he really isn't. So I don't know how many years he's got left, but he could have a long-term plan. And when we talk about interest rates, we always talk about terminal pricing. We try to figure out, we don't know how many moves it is, but where's it going to end up? So what do you think his end game is? And I've seen some scary scenarios that he wants to reverse all the concessions following the dissolution of the former Soviet Union. He wants to reverse a lot of that. And then I've heard more hawkish people say we need a red line. What do we think the red line would be for the U.S. or its allies in terms of where we would allow Putin to go before we really? I don't. What our possible retaliatory moves could be, I have no idea. Living in a world where, with mutually assured destruction, I don't even know what's possible. But what's a red line look like with Vladimir Putin?
Well, it's been a fascinating day and a half because Vladimir Putin gave a speech yesterday that across Washington, for people who watch Russia, essentially was described as bonkers. It was described as a crazy speech, speaking to the idea that Ukraine doesn't exist, as you spoke about before. So it looks like Putin is continuing to do what he's tried to do for more than 2 decades, which is to reestablish Russian spheres of influence all along his borders. He doesn't want a democracy in Ukraine to flower right next to Russia. He wants to control what happens in Ukraine. And so he sees his red lines as where Russia has historically been, including with the Soviet Union. So for us, for the West, for NATO, the European Union, the red lines are in reverse, which is that no country should be told what to do by a country, Russia or any other country, in terms of its sovereignty, in terms of its alliances. And the red lines are that we are saying no to Vladimir Putin going further. And this is where the fault line is right now in Ukraine. And I think what we have to point out and what is so significant about this moment is that there is a sanctions wall about to be breached by Vladimir Putin if he goes further that we have never seen before. A powerful package that includes the Nord Stream 2 cutoff from Germany, that would cut off Russia from the global financial system, that would look at export controls that the Commerce Department would implement to block American technology going into Russia. And that is a level of financial impact that we have never yet seen. And so I think that that's where the calibration is right now. That is where Redline is right now. And there's a lot of unity across both parties for that kind of position because of the way Putin continues to encroach, and encroach.
Joel, want to thank you for your perspective this morning. We will see, for better or worse, how all of this plays out. Thanks. Joe?